5 trucks, 8 minibus taxis, 22 light motor vehicles and 6 human lives. That is the toll of yesterday's horrific crash on the N3 between Howick and Sadara in KwaZulu-Natal. And of course, there are some 78 people in hospital who have been injured as a result of this multiple vehicle pile-up. Let's get the very latest news now from our reporter, Dasen Thathiah, who's been at the scene today. Dasen, thank you so much for joining us. We know there were misty conditions. Have you got a clear picture of exactly what caused this accident, how it unfolded?
Well, Sal, I'll start by reiterating what the officials at the scene said today, and that's that it's only a preliminary investigation that's been done. They don't actually have a cause yet. But I'll also relay to you what I've managed to kind of get from the people I've been speaking to on the scene, the paramedics, the emergency services personnel, the tow truck operators. And it would seem that all of this started because there was a collision that occurred down this stretch of road, just around where there's quite a sharp bend. This is on the N3, and the road tends to slope downwards slightly. And if you were standing on that road, you wouldn't necessarily see what awaits you as you take the turn. Now add to that the misty conditions, add to that the rain that had come earlier in the day. One of the tow truck operators saying to us that there were also leaves that had fallen off the trees, which compounded the situation. So that seems to be the start of all of this. And then after that, there were several other collisions that occurred, eventually resulting in that pile-up that we saw, which ultimately ended the way you described it, with over 40 vehicles there and as well as many people injured, and those 6 people that passed away. I had the opportunity, Sal, to speak to one of the tow truck operators that was there quite early, shortly after that first collision took place. In fact, one of their vehicles was hit when the second collision occurred. Let's listen to what he had to say to me when he was describing what they found when they got to the scene.
It gives me goosebumps to remember what went down here yesterday. It was crazy. You could not see probably 2 cars in front of you. The mist was thick. We had the tanker which were releasing gas out. Combined with that, you had a cloud which you could not see anything. It was chaos here. So there was high volumes of traffic yesterday, being the Easter weekend. We had a first initial accident just around the bend there, approximately half a K from here. We had an initial accident there where the first vehicle knocked into a taxi, which our guys were attending, and then we had a second incident where another motor vehicle knocked into a truck. And the third incident happened just by those arrows there, if you see at the bottom, where there was a taxi as well and a light motor vehicle. But because of the backlog, it started just slamming on and people just started smacking into each other. There was a truck that came in, 18-wheeler, that avoided the whole incident, went into the intermediate and crossed over almost onto the southbound carriageway, which saved a lot because he would have knocked those taxis badly and we would have had a lot more deaths there.
It sounds like one truck driver took some evasive action to actually avoid even more deaths. Thank goodness for that, at least. But all this points to potentially not enough following distance, particularly in difficult driving conditions. I mean, what's being said about human error here, and what is government saying?
You know, we always look at these periods, Sal, and notice that government puts out, many of these government departments, they put out press releases and they talk about additional safety measures and extra resources during this particular period. But it would seem that ultimately that's not enough, because that's just one component in keeping people safe on the roads during this period. If you look at yesterday, that was the time that many people were leaving the province and heading back home, heading to Johannesburg or other parts of the province, and it was particularly busy. And yes, there were police officials that were on duty, there were traffic officers, but ultimately it really comes down to one thing, and that's how people behave behind the steering wheel. And that is something that can't be policed, because there isn't a traffic police officer that is situated, within every few kilometers. They have them quite spaced out, and they have them at certain checkpoints. And that is an ongoing concern. When we spoke to the Transport Minister earlier, that's something that she mentioned as well, and she said that unfortunately, when it comes to these incidents, you are talking about human error that is often at play, while at the same time saying that they haven't fully established the cause here. She was also at pains to say that although in the past many of the accidents we've seen involved trucks, she didn't want to put that down as a cause just yet in this particular accident, because she says that they haven't yet established that. So this is still the preliminary investigation, that they are involved with, and that's why they don't have all of those details. But let's listen to what she had to say on that issue of human error when she briefed us on the N3 earlier today.
The investigation is still going on, so we'll await the investigation to be finalized. And then, of course, I think only then will we know as to what happened. We always emphasize that the human factors are the causes of many of our accidents. They account for more than 80% of our accidents on the road. It may necessarily not be this one. But of course, the environmental factors, where we look at the issue of weather, mist, and so on, they too are responsible for many of the accidents. But of course, if we were to have it right with the human factor issues, then we would not have many of the accidents. We will be able to avoid those. And of course, the last one will be the engineering, of course, the road itself, whether it's potholed, whether there are curbs, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so 6 lives lost, but over 70 people in hospital. Dasen, do you have an update on the injured at all?
Well, all we found out was that some of those people were critically injured in that crash, but the injuries ranged from minor injuries to those very serious injuries. In fact, the 6th person that we're talking about that passed away, that person actually passed away in hospital, because there were 5 people that passed away on the scene. And if you look at the extent of the damage, there were certain points within that pileup that I think there were motorists that were more badly affected. There were also reports of people, trying to, again, think ahead, and they realized, gosh, the conditions were misty, so they were trying to get out of their vehicles, and that's how some of them got injured, because in getting out of their vehicles to get to a place of safety, that's when they were struck. There were some people that were found under cars as well. So at this point, it seems that those that are currently injured remain in hospital. They were spread out over a few hospitals, but hopefully they will all recover and be released soon.
All right, thank you so much for that update. Dasen Thathiah in Durban, just giving us the very latest on that multiple vehicle pile-up on the N3 yesterday afternoon.